Childhood obesity is a growing concern not only in the Caribbean, but around the world. The impact on our children's health, well-being, and future is quite profound. In the Caribbean, even though we have the lure of beautiful beaches, rich cultural traditions, and a delicious cuisine from each and every island and country that makes up the Caribbean, it is a source of pride, but it also presents its unique challenges when it comes to healthy lifestyle. This webinar that you will be hearing gives you the opportunity to hear from experts in the field of childhood obesity, community leaders, as well as those of Rotarians who are actively working on initiatives to promote healthy living among our youths. We will explore the root cause of childhood obesity, its impact on individuals and society, and more so its impact from a mental health focus. With that said, allow me welcome all of you on behalf of our chair, Dr. Virginia Osberg, the chair of the District Rotary 7030 Childhood Obesity Prevention Program. Allow me also to establish a protocol by acknowledging our District Governor, Brian, and any past District Governor that is among our attendees. District Governor Brian, please do open your mic and officially make your remarks to launch this webinar. Over to you, District Governor Brian.
Thank you, Moderator Tariq, and good evening to everyone, especially our distinguished panelists. Fellow Rotarians and participants from throughout our Rotary District, I am truly delighted to welcome you to this important online lecture on childhood obesity in our region. I have the honor of presenting some very brief remarks, and the emphasis here is on brief, as we embark on this journey to explore one of the most pressing health concerns facing our region. But, before we dive into the heart of today's event, I would like to extend, on behalf of the entire Rotary District, our heartfelt gratitude to Rotarian Dr. Virginia Usberg for her unwavering dedication to the fight against childhood obesity and her commitment to making this lecture a reality. It's through the dedication and hard work of outstanding Rotarians like Virginia that we can come together, share knowledge, and work together towards a healthier, brighter future for our region. Now, as our moderator Tariq mentioned, childhood obesity is a persistent concern that affects the lives of countless children and families across our region. It is a complex and multifaceted issue, one that certainly demands our attention and collective action. So the purpose of tonight's lecture is to shed light on the unique challenges faced in our communities and to explore potential solutions. And we will do that through insights and expertise of our distinguished experts. Childhood obesity, as again Tariq alluded to, is more than just a physical health concern. It has far-reaching implications that extend into adulthood, affecting not only mental health, but the social and economic fabric of our communities. Therefore, it is crucial that we come together like this, share knowledge, and engage in open and informed discussions. In our region, we are blessed with a rich tapestry of cultures, a rich tapestry of traditions and unique environments. However, this diversity also presents unique challenges when addressing childhood obesity. Our experts will provide insights and solutions that are tailored to our region, acknowledging the nuances of our regional context. So I encourage all of you tonight to engage, listen, and actively participate in the discussions. Engage with our experts. Your questions and insights will be invaluable, as they will help us collectively identify solutions that can make a real difference in the lives of our children. I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Your presence is testimony to the commitment to the well-being of our children and the future of our communities. By working together, we can create a healthier, happier, and more vibrant future for our region. So without further ado, let us begin this rich journey of education, discovery, and action. So thank you, and let us move forward in our shared pursuit of a healthier Caribbean for our children. Thank you, and back over to you, Moderator Tariq.
Thank you so much, DG Brian, for those warm words of welcome and being in the forefront also with us for the fight against childhood obesity, a pressing problem that is ongoing within the Caribbean. Before we get into the meat of the matter that all of you are excited to hear, allow me just to share some ground rules and some quick house rules. For persons who are speaking French and will prefer to listen to this webinar in French, kindly click on your interpretation icon and then you can switch over to French. Added to that, we do have a section for question and answer. And so just after every presentation, we'll have 10 minutes that allows us to ask questions. If you have any question, you can share it right within the chat and we will respond. So take a 10 seconds quickly, switch over for those who would like to switch over. It is our hope that by the end of this webinar, all of you will be inspired and be equipped with the knowledge and tools to join the fight against childhood obesity in the Caribbean. Together, all of us as a group, we can make a significant impact, not only for our country, but starting simple, small, right within our own households, our own communities, and then we can extend that to our own clubs. We need to focus on our youths, our children, and ensure that they have a brighter and healthier future. And so with that said, allow me to introduce our first speaker of the night, Dr. Rosman Adams. And Dr. Rosman Adams, it's a warm pleasure to introduce you to the team. I know Dr. Adams, having worked with him for quite a number of years. Dr. Rosman Adams is a national of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He is a medical doctor, trained in medicine, but he also has a Master of Science in Public Health and Bioethics. He also holds a postgraduate certificate in Global Health Diplomacy. Dr. Adams would have specialized in public health for the past 15 years, making impactful changes within the health sector, not only nationally, but within the region and an international arena. He would have had a focus in many areas, including disease surveillance, communicable diseases, emergency response, and improving health systems in anywhere he can. Dr. Adams began his robust career in public health as a coordinator of the National Communicable Disease Program in the Ministry of Health, Wellness, and Environment in St. Vincent. There, he served as the national epidemiologist, where he worked and focused on strengthening public health surveillance and strategic information to guide health policy programs and action, a much needed focus in any healthcare system. He then proceeded to serve as the head of the Health Information, Communicable Disease, and Emergency Response at the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, where he led on the development, implementation, as well as monitoring and evaluation of Caribbean regional health security strategy as a common strategic framework for CARPHA and focused on managing and responding to emergency diseases, threats, and other public health issues. Dr. Adams would have then moved on to serve as the director of the Caribbean Pan-Caribbean Partnership Against HIV/AIDS from 2000 to 2002, where we ensure that HIV/AIDS remain a relevant public health issue despite the divergent attention during the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Adams currently serves as a health system and service advisor at the Pan American Health Organization in Suriname, and he's also the chair of the board of directors of the Caribbean Family Planning Association. And with that, warm welcome, Dr. Adams. We do look forward to hearing your presentation on a focus on childhood obesity and mental health. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Tariq, and good evening to everyone. I would like to first of all recognize and thank Virginia for inviting me to do this presentation on this important topic. I've had the opportunity to work with Virginia at the professional level while at CAFA, but also on the Rotary Childhood Obesity project that she's spearheading and is really doing an excellent job in that. Let me share my presentation. Let me know, Tariq, if you're able to see it.
Sure, go ahead, let's see.
Are you able to see it yet?
Yes, and it's full screen. Go ahead.
Great, excellent. So my presentation this evening is titled Childhood Obesity, a Growing Crisis in Our Region. And I'm sure that the topic comes as no surprise to us, as we have been seeing and as we heard earlier from Brian, and also from you, Tariq, that childhood obesity continues to be a problem affecting us in the region. I will start my presentation by setting the context and really draw the importance of why we're speaking about childhood obesity and the link to chronic non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. The Caribbean region that we're living in has the highest burden of NCDs for the developing nations in the whole region of the Americas. And these NCDs, non-communicable diseases, are the leading cause of mortality and morbidity. Over 70% of all deaths that occur in our region are due to non-communicable diseases, principally cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and diabetes. And as high as 40% of the NCD deaths occur prematurely in those who are under 70, and these can be potentially be prevented. So childhood obesity, as my presentation is titled, is a growing crisis, and it continues to grow, and we need to do interventions in order to halt childhood obesity or to decrease the rate of increase of childhood obesity. Some data from our region have shown that over the past 3 decades, the number of overweight children has been steadily increasing. In 1990, 6.2% of children under the age of 5 were living with overweight, compared to 7.5% in 2020, which equivalent to approximately 4,000 children in our region. And 3 out of every 10 children aged 5 to 19 years old in our region have overweight. So it's really a problem that is increasing, and that's the reason why we're having this discussion this evening, to see what practical steps we can take in order to stop and to decrease childhood obesity. I want to focus on this slide, and it is in Spanish, but don't pay much attention to the language. It is just to compare and to show you that in our region, we still suffer from the double burden of malnutrition. That is, on one hand, there is chronic malnutrition, and on the other hand, we're facing the problem of overweight. In the region of Latin America and the Caribbean, we have 11% of children less than 5 years of age with malnutrition. And in the same region, Latin America and the Caribbean, there is approximately 7.5% of children less than 5 years of age that are overweight. But if you look at the Caribbean region, which is, and the dark blue is malnutrition, which is deficit, and the light blue is overweight, which is linked to childhood obesity. If you look at the Caribbean region, what we're seeing is that overweight equal to or has surpassed issues of malnutrition in many of the Caribbean countries. So it is really showing that we do have an increase in of overweight and childhood obesity in our region. So why are we concerned about childhood obesity? There are three important reasons that I've put together. First of all, the health risk is associated with childhood obesity. Childhood obesity is linked to non-communicable diseases or chronic diseases such as diabetes, and it also increases the risk of various types of cancers. Second, the impact on mental health, and I know Professor Wilco will speak more to this, that there is issues around stigma and obesity, and this do affect children, and it impact on their performance at school, their ability to learn, etc. And also, it is also linked to developmental risk. And again, Professor Wilco will speak about some of these developmental risks and the medical implications that childhood obesity has on children. Childhood obesity is not a problem that will disappear. I think that sometimes we think that, oh, the children are young and they're overweight and they will grow it out, or over time it will disappear. But the data have shown that 25% of children who are obese at age 6 will be obese as an adult, and up to 75% of children who are obese at age 12 will be obese as an adult. And obesity is a risk factor for many chronic diseases. And I will show you a figure that speaks about as you go into adulthood and as you go through the life cycle, as you get older, these risks for chronic diseases increases. So the figure, and I think if there's anything that you take away from my presentation, I want you to take this away. If you look at the x-axis, which is labeled life course, it is showing it goes from when you are pretty much antenatal, as you develop into childhood and adolescence, and as you move to adulthood and to an older age. And if you look at the y-axis, which is showing you the risk of communicable diseases, as one goes through the life cycle, the risk of chronic diseases increases. And this is shown by the bold blue line. So you can see as you proceed through the life course, as you get older, your risk of chronic non-communicable diseases increases. However, there are interventions that can be taken, and I'll speak to some of these interventions later on, that one can take. And if you take these interventions, your risk of non-communicable diseases and chronic diseases can be decreased. So first of all, if you take all intervention, if the mother is able to take all intervention, and interventions can be taken in the infancy period, that is the first red area that is highlighted in the figure, your risk of developing chronic diseases can be decreased significantly, and that this is the first dotted line that you're seeing. If interventions are taken later on in childhood and in adolescence, the risk also decreases significantly, somewhat decreases. However, if interventions are taken later on in adulthood, the chance or the risk does not decrease by much. So you can see the dotted lines that are showing when the interventions take place and the decrease in the risk of chronic non-communicable diseases. So what are some of the risk factors when we speak about childhood obesity? As you know, many diseases do have risk factors, and when we speak about them, there are certain things that drive childhood obesity. There are the risk factors that are the modifiable risk factors, those that we can change and make a difference, and then there are those that are non-modifiable that really we can't do much about. And so if we have to address childhood obesity, we cannot do so without addressing some of these risk factors. And the risk factors are pretty much the same globally and in the Caribbean region. But there are 5 risk factors that are very important for us in the Caribbean region. The first is that our region has been declining in exclusive breastfeeding. Only 38% of children under 6 months of age are exclusively breastfed. And so what this tends to do is that as the children are very young, we start introducing food into their diet. And some of these foods are very high in calories, and therefore we start programming these children to like these foods, and so start developing this culture of these food. The other is also diet. In our region, children who are 6 to 23, only 62% of them do have an adequate diet of minimal diversity. There is also the issue of physical inactivity, where data has shown that only 16% of children do a minimum of 60 minutes of physical exercise a day. Also, data from across many countries in our region have shown that there is generally the low consumption of fruit and vegetables, and although this STEPS data is in adults, it is generally an indication of what children are also consuming. So if adults are consuming low quantities, portions of fruits and vegetables, we can assume that also the children are also consuming low portions of fruits and vegetables. And then we live in what we call an obesogenic food environment with high consumption of processed food, high consumption of food with trans fats, and the availability of sugary sweetened beverages. So what are some of the principal causes that are driving childhood obesity in our region? First and foremost, we have to consider the family environment. I think everything starts at home, and the family environment is very important. According to the American Society of Obesity, the American Obesity Association, parents are the most important role models for children. Children generally will eat what the parents eat. They will not eat what the parents don't eat, and so forth. So the home environment is quite important in driving these lifestyle changes and driving, what children consume and what they do. Obesity generally tend to run in families, as we will say in the Caribbean. And if you have parents who are obese, parents who are overweight, generally you may find that children are also overweight, because the same patterns and the same lifestyle are also given to the children. Children of active parents are 6 times more likely to be physically active than kids whose parents are sedentary. And so again, this is why in ensuring that there is a home environment that promotes healthy lifestyle is so critical in order to prevent childhood obesity and reduce overweight. The effect of television, social media, I don't think that this is anything new. I think we all, it has a very strong influence in driving childhood we're seeing commercials that feature many junk food that promote weight gain, such as, fast food, soft drinks, sweet, sugar sweetened beverages, and breakfast cereals. And children seem to passively consume excessive amount of energy-dense food while watching TV, using social media. Games, they can sit down for hours and they can take part in these activities and consume food that are that are highly processed, food that are rich in sugar, trans fat, etc. And then we're now developing a culture of pickup of food, delivery of food, etc., where there are many mobile apps, telephone apps that are making it easy for us to buy food. And so what we've seen is that families are now eating fewer meals together at home, fewer home cooked foods, because it is so easy to just grab your phone, grab your device, and order food online. Children generally tend to eat more food when meals are eaten at restaurants. I know that at restaurants, they may not have children portions, and portions may be big, and so they present the children with a portion that is an adult-sized portion, and then they're forced to eat it, because some parents may think, it's a waste of money if they just nibble at a small portion of it, that they have paid so much money at a restaurant, and so they may be forced to consume more food when they eat out. Many children eat fast food on a regular basis. Sometimes it's the only thing that it's a quick fix for food to go to school. And then there are the availability of vending machines that may be in some schools, and these are generally full of carbonated drinks, of sugary sweetened drinks instead of water and healthy choices. And then the issue of takeout food and home delivery are, as I said earlier, are also getting very popular, and the availability at your fingertip using all of these mobile apps. So how then do we solve the problem of childhood obesity? The solution is two-tier. First of all, we need to focus on prevention. Prevention. It's the only way in which we can stop childhood obesity, and it is the only way in which we can reduce the burden of chronic non-communicable diseases. But also early intervention, if childhood obesity is present, or if there's the risk of developing childhood obesity, early intervention is so critical to address this issue. We need to start by teaching healthy behaviors at a young age. And so this is very important, since, it's very difficult to make changes with age. So if you start teaching the children how to develop healthy lifestyles, proper eating, take part in physical activities, this can help them a lot. Education in physical activity and nutrition are also the cornerstone of preventing childhood obesity. We need to empower the children, but also we need to empower the parents, because the parents are very important, as we've seen in the early slide, in determining what the children consume, if they take part in physical activity or not. But also we need to educate, and we need to engage the teachers in the school environment, because the school environment is also where they spend a number of hours, approximately 8 hours or so per day. And we need to also encourage the school environment to be one that is encouraging of healthy lifestyles. Schools and families, as I've said, are the two most critical links to decreasing the prevalence of childhood obesity in terms of interventions and also prevention strategies. We need to focus on ensuring that there is, an active environment for children, that they're able to partake in physical activities. We need to move away from having them sitting on all of these devices, and ensure that they are enrolled in structured activities in which they can move about and take part in physical activity. Limit the amount of TV, social media, video games, etc. implement the same healthy diet for the entire family and not just some selected individuals. Sometimes as parents and as adults, we may want to eat healthy because, we want to lose some weight and so forth. And so there are differences in terms of diet and what is consumed amongst children and adults. It is important that if you implement the same healthy diet, this can have a greater impact on everyone. For children, we should avoid using food as a reward or the lack of food as a punishment. Encourage kids to eat a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables, and also do not cut out treats altogether. Try to limit them in moderation, or otherwise, if you cut it out totally from children at home, they will overindulge when they go to school, because then they don't get these stuff. So it's really ensuring that things are done in moderation. We also need to start as early as possible to protect and promote breastfeeding and complementary feeding. As you would have seen, there is a decrease in terms of exclusive breastfeeding in our region, and this is something that we need to address. Once you start a healthy lifestyle early, it tends to continue into adulthood, and we know all of the benefits of initiating early breastfeeding, but also exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. We need to promote a diet of minimally processed foods such as vegetables, fruits, and legumes. Encourage water consumption. Again, water can be used instead of all of these sweetened beverages. We need to also encourage family and children involvement in food production. As we know, production is linked to consumption. So what you produce, you eat. And so there needs to be initiatives to encourage family and children to take part in maybe home gardening, gardening at school, etc., so that they can produce healthy foods. Develop capacity at home and at school to support healthy eating, and also to focus on the regulatory environment for ultra-processed food, excess sugar, sodium, trans fat, etc. In our region, we're doing a lot in terms of public health to really ensure that the regulatory environment exists where foods are branded, and there is a lot of discussion happening now around the octagonal food labeling that we're trying to get on food that will warn you that something is high in sodium, something is high in trans fat, so that you're aware of what you're eating. Because we know that the food labels that are at the back of the food sometimes or most times are very difficult and complicated to read, and so it really means nothing to you. And so what the public health in our region is doing now is to simplify it and to look at the product and decide what is it high in terms of what is bad for your health. And so you will see this hopefully once it's approved and all countries are on board, you will see this on the food and they will say high in trans fat, high in sodium, high in sugar, so that you're empowered and you can make that decision in terms of what you want to consume. So this is an example of the type of octagonal labeling, and Virginia has been really doing some work in terms of promoting this through civil society and really pushing for us to implement this in our region, because it will enable us as parents to make healthy choices, but also to encourage our children to also eat healthy and to prevent issues such as overweight and childhood obesity. So with that, Tariq, I thank you very much, and this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Rosman, for such an enlightening presentation. I'm sure that not only myself, but many of our attendees and participants who would have learned so much, especially given the fact, starting off with such a thought-provoking statistics. Since in the 1990s, we had a childhood obesity prevalence of 6.2%, which then would have drastically increased by the end of 2020 to 7.5. Even further alarming was the Spanish slide that shows many of our familiar cultural countries. And you know, we Caribbean people, we love our food. Countries such as Barbados, with a prevalence of 11.4% of childhood obesity, Trinidad and Tobago, 11%, Belize, 8%, Guyana, 6.6, Jamaica, 8.6. I really like the points that you highlighted, the importance of addressing health risk factors, because if we don't do that, not only early, even as much as being from during pregnancy and having an overweight baby, it can lead to other chronic disease and non-communicable disease, diabetes, and even as much as cancer and developmental issues. And your key point about prevention, prevention, prevention. Most importantly, the point you highlighted, that childhood obesity, working and dealing with it as an issue is not a problem of today, but a problem since yesterday. Something that we all need to come together and start focusing on. I really like the last slide on some of the food items having to put in high sugar content and high salt, and among others. That is something that we can push for in the Caribbean. Thank you so much for this presentation and the knowledge imparted to us. I now open the floor to some questions. I know Virginia is going to help me if there's any in the chat. No questions as yet. Colleagues, friends, Rotarians, please, you have Dr. Rosman Adams, public health specialist, at your disposal. Go ahead, ask any question, of course, related to childhood obesity that he can assist you and guide you with an answer. And maybe I can start it off, Rosman, is that I know in Guyana, one of the biggest focus when it comes to tackling childhood obesity is ensuring that we can look at how effective we can implement school-based interventions. And maybe this is something that if you can share a few ideas, few thoughts that we can implement within our small community schools and then eventually extend it, that of course helps the impact and prevent childhood obesity.
Yes, thank you, Tariq. I think that, as I said, that the school environment is so important. This is where most of our children spend their time, and we need to include in the curriculum more. As you know, they go to school and it's math, English, another subject, and they're not taught about these things, healthy lifestyles, and so forth. We need to push for that in the school environment there is some space for that. I know in the health and family life education curriculum, there is some mention of this, but it has to be greater, where they're taught, but also there is the opportunity for the practical aspect of it, where maybe there is the backyard gardening, and practically they're able to grow their own fruits and vegetables, because as we've seen, that food that you consume, you're more likely to eat it, because you know what you grow. And I know that there have been some initiatives across our region that they say, eat what you grow, and what you grow, and so forth. So I think there has to be that greater discussion between ministries of health, ministries of education, and other sectors to encourage this in the school environment. But also we need to empower the teachers, because it's easier said than done. We also need to encourage the teachers so that they have the skills to support the children in this, because you just can't say to them, teach healthy eating, or teach the children to grow their own food. They themselves must be empowered with a curriculum and with ways in which they can they can teach. So I think the discussion has started, but maybe we need to increase the momentum around this, because we have seen the burden of NCDs and chronic diseases is increasing. It's not going down. Premature mortality from chronic diseases, cancers, rampant across across the region, and it is due to increasing obesity, the risk factors that some of the major risk factors: smoking, excessive alcohol consumption, unhealthy diet, and inactivity.
Thank you so much for that. And quickly, I want to add that technology and screen time has been one of the contributing factor to contributing to childhood obesity. And as you know, we live in a digital era, and so technology is an integral part of our children's life. And so how can we, in terms of giving advice, strike that balance between leveraging technology for educational purposes and academic performance, and at the same time not being too excessively on screen that contributes to childhood obesity? What innovative tech-based interventions would you like to suggest?
Very good question. We do live in a digital age, so these things are here to stay and will be used by children. However, it is ensuring that there is a balance. And so we're not saying that you need to remove these, games, phones, etc. from children. They will use it, and they have to use it, as you have said, because more and more things are becoming digital, and we have to embrace the digital transformation. However, let us not leave behind that we have to take part in physical activity, and physical activity is important in terms of having a healthy lifestyle. And so that is why in one of my slides I said that you can enroll children in activities that encourage their movement, be it if they're hiking, extracurricular activities, if they're taking part in swimming, if they're taking part in football, etc. Because that time is specifically dedicated for physical activity. Also, in the school environment, we need to encourage and promote. I know many of the schools do have physical education, and so we need to encourage and support and ensure that they are doing physical education, because if they don't move at home, at least during that slot of physical education in school, they have the opportunity to be active.
Thank you so much for that. And there are quite a few questions within the chat. Allow me just to share a few with you. One of the questions was asking the participant really love your slide in terms of the statistics. And they were asking if there's actually any, apart from the percentage, actual numbers in terms of looking at age groups, male to female ratios, and such.
Yes, so if you go to the PAHO WHO website, there are actual numbers, percentage, etc. If you go to NCDs, obesity, and so forth, you can actually find numbers and reports from countries there.
Thank you so much. Another question, one of your slides highlighted under and malnourished youths as well as obese youths. Are these two health concerns exclusive of each other?
It's a very good question. These two issues are very important. As we've seen, there is the epidemiological transition. If you take back this slide, maybe about three or so decades back, you may see that that undernutrition or what we typically will call malnutrition predominated in our region. However, with lifestyle changes, what we've been seeing is that overweight, obesity is now equal or is taking over that. But it is very important that and it can happen that in one country you have the double burden, because again the division of socioeconomic classes in one, you can have predominating malnutrition in terms of deficit, and in another, you can have predominating overweight and childhood obesity. So we can't exclude them. I think we have to address them as one, because the solution to both of them is the same. It is early intervention, and it is also also prevention. In the case of deficit, it is ensuring that that there is the provision of adequate nutrition, and in the case of overweight, it is ensuring that that they do eat a quantity that is in terms of calorie that is sufficient for them, and avoiding the the excessive sugary beverages, trans fat, etc. So they are addressed by healthy diet.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. And another question, in the sense that in the Caribbean, the prevalence of childhood obesity is influenced by dietary habits and food environment, as you pointed out. Can you discuss any potential impact of policy initiatives such as sugar taxation, and you did mention food labeling, in curbing some of the childhood obesities within our region?
Yes, Tariq, I think the regulatory environment is so critical, because we have to push policymakers to enact policies and develop policies to prevent not only childhood obesity, but also to prevent the rise in chronic non-communicable diseases. And some of these initiatives are, as you would mention, are the health tax, such as taxing sugary beverages, limiting the availability of these in the school environment. But also, what I showed in my final slides, the provision of these food labels that encourages us as customers to make the choice for healthy food. So if something is branded as high in sodium, we know that we should not consume it. Or if we're consuming it, to consume it in moderation. But also, there are other policy initiatives that are aimed at addressing people to ensure that to support them in terms of gardening, food production, etc.
Thank you so much for that, Rosman. Rosman, there's so many questions. I'll try to randomly choose two, and then I will encourage you that while we move on to the next presenter, Dr. Wilco, you can respond to some of the questions. And in no order, I don't want no one to tell me that I'm trying to be biased. I'm randomly scrolling, and I'll choose another question. And so I really like this one that asked about, based on your background working in the Caribbean, is there any specific fundings that are available from the regional level? For example, CARICOM, they did mention CARFA, that you can access small grants or financing to develop community-based projects.
I'm not sure, and I can't pinpoint any specific funding, but I'm sure that there are always grants that are available through development partners and so forth to support these small projects. I know that there's a Rotary project that is happening across many of our countries, but I'm certain that there will be the availability of of resources to through civil society also available for them to implement very small projects. Not any that I can pinpoint now.
Yeah. And then I'll take the last question, and I'll merge two into one, so maybe you can give a response and then wrap up any last comments with our response. Is looking at physical education is generally done in school, especially in the younger classes. But then as the children grows older, this is no longer continued. And so what role does the school play in promoting healthier lifestyles and nutrition that focuses on all age groups?
Yeah. that comes as no surprise. As you know, as the children get older, they have to prepare for exams, and so that's that time is taken away from them. Instead of taking part in physical activity, then more focus is on the academics. I think we need to have that that discussion. Again, addressing childhood obesity is not just a health issue. It is all of society. It is all of government, and so we need to have and encourage the dialogue between ministries of health, ministries of education, etc. That it is encouraged straight throughout, the school cycle, and physical education is not looked as just an empty spot or punishment or something, a time to a free period or something like that. But physical education is very critical in terms of remaining and staying healthy. So the discussion has to continue. All sector: agriculture, education, health, even finance, because then we can speak and talk about all of these. But these initiatives do need financing, so we need to ensure that all of government is involved in the in initiatives and discussions and in encouraging and fostering healthy environment at the school level and also at the community level.
Thank you so much for your comments, Dr. Rosman Adams, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful presentation, good comments. I especially like the last point about integrating many of the sectors within our societies: agriculture, tourism, and finance. And that boils down to an initiative that is supported a lot by CARICOM as well as CARFA, the One Health initiative that many countries are now embracing, that you can't be healthy if you just want to focus on health alone. We need to integrate other sectors. So thank you so much. Participants, I know you have so many questions for Rosman. He's not leaving. He is with us. Please continue putting your questions in the chat. He will respond to you, and we'll move on to our next speaker. And so with that, I have the warm pleasure of introducing Dr. Wilco Ziltman. For all intents and purposes, I will stick to saying Dr. Wilco because I'm not good with Dutch. And so please forgive me, Dr. Wilco. I'll just use your first name. So Dr. Wilco, he's a pediatrician. He is from Paramaribo, Suriname. He's been a pediatrician for over since 1998. Oh boy, I don't know. Well, I was just about 5 years then. He would have completed his education in an academic medical center in Netherlands, Amsterdam. He has this keen passion for practicing rural medicine, especially pediatric rural medicine, where he will travel to the interiors of Suriname and do consultation with medical missions. In 2009, he would have obtained his PhD, beside that being of a doctor, from the University of Amsterdam, with graduating with a research that was focused on sugar metabolism in children with malaria and other infectious disease. He was recently appointed as a professor of pediatrics at the Faculty of Medical Sciences of Anton de Kom University, with a special focus in his research and teaching on stressors and potential protective factors in early life of the child and the consequences of neurological development and mental health. Dr. Wilco is also a trainer of other pediatricians within Suriname, but not only there, he works with training persons in Amsterdam and the University of Brussels, and also General Suriname's general practitioner. He holds several ambitious positions, including chairman of the Education Committee for Pediatrics and a member of Specialist Registration Committee of Suriname Association of Medical Doctors. And so without further ado, allow me to call on Dr. Wilco to share with you the aspects of neurological development and mental health as it has to do with childhood obesity. Over to you, Dr. Wilco.
Thank you, Tariq. Let me share my screen. You see this?
Yes, we are seeing it clear. Go ahead.
Great. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the introduction and the invitation to speak on this regional platform that I believe can have a significant impact on improving early childhood health in the region. I would like to start with a brief description of the development of the young child's brain in order to emphasize that a great deal is happening during that early childhood period. And Dr. Rosmond already mentioned it. It's the most important period of life in which adjustments can be made. For example, with early childhood intervention programs that have shown to give a huge return of investment. And I'll come to that later. The basic structure of the brain is constructed through a continuous process that begins before birth and continues into adulthood. Early experiences influence the quality of that architecture by laying a solid, or indeed a fragile, foundation for all learning, health, and behavior that follows in the rest of life. The developing brain is shaped by the influences of genes that the child receives from the parents and the experiences, especially during the first years of life, both in positive and negative sense. The interactive relationship between children and their parents and other caregivers in the family or in the community is important. Young children naturally seek interaction through babbling, facial expressions, and gestures, and adults respond back to them with the same type of vocalization and gestures. In the absence of such responses, or if the responses are unreliable or inappropriate, the brain's structure does not form as expected, which in turn can lead to differences in learning and behavior that may continue into adulthood. In the first years of life, in every second, more than 1 million neural connections are formed. After this period of rapid proliferation, those connections are reduced by a process called pruning, the goal of which is to make brain circuits work more efficiently. The brain grows particularly fast in the first years, and by the age of 5, 90% of that growth is already complete. By the age of 4, the child has already developed 50% of the total IQ. So the building blocks it acquires in those first few years largely determine the rest of life. The brain is most flexible early in life to handle a wide range of impressions and interactions, but as the brain becomes more specialized to take on more complex functions, it is less able to reorganize and adapt to new or unexpected challenges. Sensory pathways for vision and hearing are the first to develop and peak as early as 6 months of age, as you can see on this slide. At the age of 9 months, language development is at its maximum, so the child may only pronounce da, da, and the number of sounds that are unintelligible to us. It already understands a lot more. It is therefore important not to use baby language and to start reading books at an early age so the child is introduced to new words. And although the windows for learning languages and other skills remain open, these brain circuits become increasingly difficult to change over time. And it's therefore easier for a young child to learn one or more languages than an adult. Now let's zoom in on child obesity. Child obesity, and Dr. Rosmond also mentioned this, the rates overall in the last decades have risen over 6%, but also the prevalence of psychiatric disorders in children and adolescents rose over 12%. We did some research on childhood obesity in Suriname, and nearly 4,000 students were surveyed in the remote tropical rainforest interior. And surprisingly, we were looking for malnutrition, and meaning underweight. And surprisingly, 1 in 7 children was overweight. And we also looked at anemia, and both the underweight and the overweight children had equal prevalence of anemia, answering, I think, the question that if you may be overweight, but still you can be malnourished. Our colleagues my colleagues did some additional research in the coastal area, and there even 1 in 4 children was overweight. Now, complications of childhood obesity are multiple. You have short-term, long-term, you have physical and mental complications. Short-term complications include shortness of breath in light or routine activities, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, prediabetes, and even joint pains and inflammation. Long-term complications increase risk of myocardial infarction, cerebral infarction, diabetes, asthma, high blood pressure, obstructive sleep apnea. Female adolescents have some additional risks, as are reported here. And mind you, indeed, as Dr. Rossman also indicated, 80% of obese adolescents will carry this issue into adulthood. The odds of having a mental health disorder while being obese is 7 times higher for children for obese children compared to normal weight children. And children with obesity remain to exhibit high levels of anxiety, eating symptomatology, weight-related teasing, and lower body esteem in adolescence. There is a relationship between obesity and depression. Obese adolescents have a higher prevalence of school and mental health problems, including poor academic performance and self-esteem, anxiety, depressive disorders, and a greater number of reported suicide attempts. In this systematic review of 15 studies, almost 60,000 participants, it was confirmed that there is a reciprocal link between depression and obesity, meaning that obesity was found to increase the risk of depression, and depression was found to be predictive of developing obesity. For children who are overweight, living with excess pounds can be heartbreaking. In its own way, the social stigma attached to being overweight can be as damaging to a child as the physical diseases and conditions that often accompany obesity. In a society that has thinness as a role model, studies show that children as young as 6 years may associate negative stereotypes with excess weight and believe that a heavy child is simply less likable. Indeed, some children who are overweight are very popular with their classmates, feel good about themselves, and have plenty of self-confidence. But in general, if a child is obese, it is more likely to have lower self-esteem than thinner peers. Its weak self-esteem can translate into feelings of shame about its body, lack of self-confidence, and lead to poor academic performance at school. They may be told by classmates or even adults that being heavy is their own fault. They might be called names. They could be subjected to teasing and bullying. Their former friends will avoid them, and they may have trouble making new ones. They could be the last one chosen when teams are selected in physical education classes. And as a result, the child may feel as though it doesn't belong or fit anywhere. It may see itself as different and an outcast. It'll often feel lonely and is less likely than its peers to describe itself as popular or cool. And when this continues month after month, year after year, it has the risk to become clinically depressed and withdraw into itself. Some children who are overweight might seek emotional comfort in food, adding even more calories to their plates, at the same time that their pediatricians and parents are urging them to eat less or at least different. Add that to the other emotional moments in life, including stress of moving to a different community, difficulties in school, maybe death of a parent or a divorce, and some children will overindulge in food. Heavy teenagers and adults might face discrimination based solely on their weight. Some research suggests that they're less likely to be admitted by a prestigious university. They may also have a reduced chance of landing good jobs than their thinner peers. Women who are overweight have a decreased likelihood of dating or finding a marriage partner. In short, when heavy children become heavy adults, they tend to earn less money, marry less often than their friends who are of average weight. Now let's look at one of the important complications of obesity, coronary heart disease, and as Dr. Rosmond also indicated, the #1 cause of mortality worldwide. We have other recognized risk factors like cigarette smoking, dietary fat, and we all know that life interventions are important, and a lot of intention and trillions of dollars are spent to make us exercise more, make us to have weight loss, stop smoking, dietary changes, but there's much, much less reduction compared to interventions in childhood. When you are obese as a child and still obese as an adult, you have a 5-time increased chance of a heart attack, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure, and asthma. But when the child returns to normal weight, that risk disappears. So it makes a lot of sense to lose weight as an obese child. Another important observation is that obesity may start very early in childhood. Overweight 5-year-olds are 4 times as likely as normal weight children to become obese. And among children who became obese between the age of 5 and 14, already 15% were overweight beforehand. So obesity between 5 and 14 years is likely to occur at younger ages. It's important for our local policymakers to know that early investment in children can yield an impressive return of investment of 300 to more than 900% in the long term, as several Harvard studies on early childhood programs have shown. And this illustrates, again, why child development, especially from birth to 5 years of age, is a foundation for a prosperous and sustainable society. So, what to do? We need to realize that the cause of obesity is multifactorial, and then biological, psychological, and environmental factors play an important role, and there's a huge interaction between them. And these factors often arise in early childhood, but also even already in the prenatal phase. Tackling obesity requires long-time guidance in a complex network of multiple healthcare providers. We also need to realize that a sustainable positive treatment result is often difficult to achieve. There's a need for a good cooperation between child, family, and various need for care providers at every step of the chain. We need to start as young as possible and look for a combined lifestyle intervention focused on nutrition, exercise, and behavior. And there's more and more e-health and mobile health applications that become important tools in the treatment arsenal. So it's important to start early as before conception. Why is that? Take you back to Suriname, where we have a high number of adverse birth outcomes among newborns, almost 20%. Perinatal mortality, premature birth, low birth weight, a poor start with a low APGAR score, and congenital anomalies. What are the causes of adverse birth outcomes? Let me mention a few according to international studies worldwide. So in this European study, mothers' blood sugar concentrations during early pregnancy were associated with non-alcohol fatty liver disease in their school-aged children. And non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is also seen in obese children. Hypertension during pregnancy is associated with higher blood pressure in the offspring and reduced carotid artery distensibility. High blood sugar levels in pregnancies reduced fetal growth rate in mid-pregnancy and increased growth rate of the fetus at the end of the pregnancy, increased and thus having an increased risk of a baby with a high birth weight, which in turn increases your risk of developing obesity. In this very large study from China, including 6.4 million women with an impaired glucose tolerance test or diabetes before pregnancy had a higher risk of spontaneous abortion, premature birth, again, too high birth weight, but also too low birth weight. And too low birth weight is also a risk factor for developing obesity later in life. And infant mortality. This overarching review of 53 systematic reviews indicated that folic acid supplementation helps against unfavorable birth outcomes. More physical activity of the mother should be promoted. Mother's body mass index plays a role. The higher the BMI, the more adverse birth outcomes. As for increased weight gain during pregnancy and advanced age of the father. Allow me to touch on a topic that is highly relevant to pregnant mothers in Suriname. It's known that exposure during pregnancy and after birth to non-essential neurotoxic metals such as mercury and lead can lead to developmental disorders. I'm the PI of a study that included a cohort of 1,200 mothers for these exposures. And of the mothers that participated in our so-called Mickey Tamara study, 2 in 5 were found to have elevated mercury levels above the action level of international accepted values. And in the interior, where mercury use is abundant in the artisanal gold mining industry, even 96 of pregnant women had too high of mercury levels. In addition to mercury, the lead content of many women in the interior was also found to be high, as you can see in this slide. So you can imagine that exposures to these metals can affect birth outcomes and the neurological development of the child. Maternal depression during pregnancy was associated with lower scores for the child's fine and gross motor skills. Children whose mothers had excessive lead levels scored lower both in receptive and expressive language. Male toddlers scored lower than female toddlers in both fine motor skills and both language domains. So to wrap up, key messages. The unborn child is exposed to numerous adverse influences. Childhood obesity is a substantial problem, and there's a considerable return of investment from early childhood interventions, but we need to start early, even before conception. And the main thing would then be to encourage future parents to achieve a healthy weight and lifestyle. Thank you. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilco, for such an enlightening presentation. Of course, we've learned so much from the perspective of genetics and neurological development, where you highlighted some key points of early exposure and its impact it can have on childhood obesity, especially when it comes to genetics. I especially like the points that you highlighted of an increase in psychiatric disorders of over 10%, especially in the Caribbean countries. The link of childhood obesity towards depression, but not only depression, suicide, as we are aware that suicide happens to be one of the highest prevalence, has the highest prevalence within the Caribbean region, Guyana and Suriname. And so that's a study by itself. And there's also the decreased likelihood of dating and having successful marriages and even successful jobs. Those points were well highlighted by you. And surprisingly, I didn't even think about it, that persons who are obese, they can earn less because of their imaging. And your key point at the end there of starting early is important, in that not only ourselves as doctors, but also policymakers, we need to start early in implementing early interventions such as the e-health and e-medicine that you highlighted. I wish you all the best in your study, the Mercury study that you mentioned, and I want to say thanks. With that, allow me to share a few questions from the chat. Participants, please, you can still share questions, not only towards Dr. Wilco, but Dr. Rosamond Adams. Please go ahead. I probably would want to start by asking a question that, given the genetic, neurological, and environmental factors that plays a role in childhood obesity, what holistic approaches can be designed to prevent childhood obesity and intervention, in terms of what role in terms of personalized genetic informed strategies that each country can take a look in implementing.
Question for me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's important to realize that tackling obesity is not an easy task, and it's because the causes are multifactorial. The strategy to tackle these should also be organized with a team of a plural team of different kinds of caretakers. That it would include a clinical genetic, that would include the physiotherapy, that would include a dietitian, a pediatrician, a child psychologist, because you need to, at the same time, treat from different angles. Second thing is that you don't treat the child only, you should treat the whole family. Because it's no use of trying to change nutritional habits in one child when the rest of the family keeps on going. with what they always have done. So that's I think in every program that you would start, you would have to have this multidisciplinary team.
Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree with that. Let me see if there's any other questions in the chat. One of the questions. Go ahead, Rosman.
No, I was while you were waiting on the question, I wanted to reflect on what Wilco just mentioned in terms of the multidisciplinary team and the amount of work that has to go in treating obesity, in terms of having a dietitian, having a physiotherapist, someone doing exercise, but also having a pediatrician and so forth. And this can be very costly in our Caribbean context. And this is really the reason why we're pushing for prevention, because if all of this is prevented, there is not the need for doing this. And so you spend less in terms of the investment, well, not the investment, but the out-of-pocket spending or insurance for health-related complications and diseases. Over.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, as I said, the returns of investment in starting early are huge.
And the Harvard study does show that just simply $1, how far investment with $1, how far that can take us. And so, as Rotarians, and with our passion towards helping communities, that's something we can look at as in what we can do. We don't have to go big. We don't have to jump to fix policies from our level. It's not our role, but start small, right within our own homes and communities, within our own clubs. Is there any other question? Let me check. There was a lovely question I was asking, and more or less reflective on Rosman's presentation. Looking at the stats from 1990 to 2020, why is it now persons are seeing this as an important issue? And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the issue, Tariq, is not that now we're seeing childhood obesity as an important issue. What the stat was showing a comparison that over the last 30 years, in 1990, that the prevalence was at 6.2%, and in 2020 7.5%, showing an increase of of approximately 400,000 children with childhood obesity. And I'm sure once we get current data, I am certain that this is going to go up, especially with COVID, with the years of COVID-19, where children were at home, probably sedentary, not taking part in physical activity, eating a lot of unhealthy food. And so the figure is really to highlight that we have to act now. Again, I think both Wilco and myself showed it in our presentation, that if the child is obese at a certain age, what is the possibility of going into adulthood with obesity? And we have also showed that taking interventions later in life does not significantly decrease the risk of chronic diseases. And it is best for us to really focus and try as much as possible. We know that it's hard, but we have to do it, to focus on prevention, because some of these obesity leads to diabetes, cancers, and so forth. But even though some of these diseases can be treated, there are lifelong complications that you have to live with, and some of these complications, become very expensive for you to manage. So the only possibly the best bet is, there's an old saying that prevention is better than cure, and let us really try to push for for preventative strategies. Let us lobby, let us push our policymakers for them to invest. probably in community projects that supports physical education, having safe spaces for physical education, and also, you know, initiatives such as school, you know, gardening in schools, etc.
Thank you so much for that, Rosman. I'll take
Can I
three.
continue?
Sure,
Can I?
definitely. Go
Okay,
ahead.
there are a few questions in the Q&A for Professor Scheelmans. Maybe you can address those questions too. One is, are there currently any interventions or programs that have successfully addressed both mental health and childhood obesity in schools? They were tackled from birth, but perhaps there is a way now in schools to tackle it. That is one of them, and then there are two more or three more after that. So maybe if Dr. Wilco, Professor Wilco can answer these questions.
Yeah, so I think if I look at the different questions, it comes down to give how do you call it, voorlichting? You need to make clear what the risks of obesity are. If a child comes in my clinic and maybe they come for another problem, and I mention, well, your child is also quite overweight, and then most of the parents start to laugh a bit. You know, they don't in the beginning see it as a big problem, and then I start telling, well, but if your child is obese now and he will stay obese, then it has a 5-time higher chance of all kinds of NCDs later in life, which are, for that cause, the #1 mortality causes worldwide. And if you are able to make your child reduce the weight to a normal level, then that risk will disappear. And that's something that most parents do appreciate and will do their best to try and change. But it's just one tool in attacking this problem, because then, you know, they need to go to a dietitian, they need to go to a physiotherapist. So it's important. One of the questions is, how do we counter the new spin that big is beautiful and we should embrace largest? Well, we shouldn't, for this reason. You know, of course, it's advertisement that makes us. I know in certain societies, it's a role model to be, you know, big, but one needs to know that it comes with certain risks. And it also goes for the family physician that asks in the practice how to prevent. It's just keep talking to the parents over and over and give them information. And of course, it's their choice to do to take action or not. But at least you've tried, and it's indeed, as Tarek indicated, it's also a matter that multiple disciplines should attack. I mean, the producers of certain products should clearly state what's in their products, etc., etc. I mean, it's all been mentioned already, but the combination of all these is I think what is necessary to make this a successful an successful program to reduce this burden, which is becoming increasing, and it's every year it's still increasing. I mean, the children are more and more on their device than ever, and it's really important to have them exercise. It's not only bad for their weight, but also for their brain development.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. And there's another question I was asking based on your expertise and training and working with pediatricians. How prepared are the pediatricians in addressing childhood obesity, and especially looking at the moms to help reduce their risk?
Yeah, well, it's I lecture medical students, and it's one of my lectures. We will have a yearly conference of pediatricians in our country at the beginning of next year. I'll be talking on childhood obesity. So again, it's informing students, informing families, informing parents, informing colleagues.
Yeah, yeah. And so, in the interest of time, I will ask both of you, Dr. Rosman Adams and Dr. Wilco Tiltman, to share your closing remarks and some brief advice when it comes to childhood obesity, its focus on prevention and mental health. Starting with you, Rosman.
Yes, thank you, Tariq. I think that what you've seen this evening is that childhood obesity is a public health challenge for us in the region, and will continue to be a public health challenge if we do not address the issue now. The rising burden of non-communicable diseases, the rising premature mortality as people under the age of 70 dying from these chronic diseases, especially, now we've seen cancers all over the place, possibly linked to the high consumption of processed, ultra-processed foods, and compounded by all of the risk factors, tobacco consumption, etc. So we really need to push for healthy lifestyles, but also we need to support the children and the parents and the school environment. There was a question in the chat that asks, that mentioned something about in the school, they're not given in the school feeding program, they're not given the children healthy food, and my response to this was education, because we need to teach the cooks what is healthy eating and how to prepare. How we can't assume that that they know. And so it comes down to really continue advocating, continue empowering through the tools of education, and don't take things for granted that that someone knows what to eat, how to prepare it, and so forth, how to do physical activity. There are lots of people, even children, adults, who want to take part in physical activity, but has a fear of just stepping out there and doing it because of a number of issues. They may not have gym clothes. They have the fear of going into the gym because all of the attention on them. But you don't have to go into the gym. You can walk and so forth. So we need to provide them with with all of this knowledge, so that they are empowered in doing that. And finally, on the issue of mental health. Mental health is so critical. There is no health without mental health. So we really need to ensure that that the mental health aspect and the support is there for the children, because there I think in both my presentation and that of Wilco, we did mention that the issue around stigma, obesity, low moral, and so forth. And so we need to support children who are overweight, and also address issues around mental health, stigma, etc. Over. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Dr. Rosman Adams. Over to you, Dr. Wilco.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think action should be needed at different levels, and my focus would be the preconception period, because it has the least costs and by far the highest success rates. It's relatively simple, and the outcome is will influence the rest of the infants and the child's and the life. So start early. as early as possible.
Definitely, the importance of education, education was highlighted and starting early. Participants, I know you would have learned a lot, but we would have exhausted our time. And so, in an effort to move forward, allow me first to invite our chairperson for the Childhood Obesity Program, Rotary District 7030, Virginia, to give the vote of thanks for us. Over to you, Virginia.
Thank you, Tariq. Maybe you can also allow me to share my video so that people can see who it is that is speaking to them.
One second, let me see, make access start video. Here you go.
Okay, thank you. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks also on behalf of District Governor Brian Glasgow and the Childhood Obesity Prevention Program team. You've seen from the presentations from both Dr. Rossman and Professor Wilco that we can go on and on and on talking about this subject on a technical level and try to translate it to the layperson's level, because for everybody it's important to really understand. That's the first step to awareness. The information shared with us today yet again confirmed why it is important that we all join the fight against childhood obesity. The lessons learned from these lectures and the actions that we have to take are also an affirmation that Rotary is the secret weapon to tackle the obesogenic environment, because we cover the chain from captains of industry to the consumption community. I want to sincerely thank both presenters, Dr. Rossman Adams and Professor Wilco Zeilmans, for their superb presentations and for taking the time to prepare the presentations so that the scientific information is presented in a way that the layperson can understand the gravity of the childhood obesity problem in combination with the challenges related to mental health. I also want to thank Sean Petty for his guidance and support during the process of preparing for this lecture, even to the last minute before we started. I also want to thank Natalie Gills and Mavis Gibbs for helping with the French translation. You know that we have two mandatory languages within our Rotary District, English and French. So everything we produce in English has to be translated in French. Thank you, Feki Gusto, for the interpretation this evening. And thank you to the district communication team for helping with the background support, and the assistant governors for stimulating their clubs to participate. I want to give a special shout out to the district secretary, Annette Marks, who really made an effort to send, resend, and again resend emails to Rotarians and Rotary actors to promote participation. And it was to no avail, because it wasn't in vain, because we had at some point in time more than 100 participants in this presentation. Also, a big thank you to Anya Blankendal for always standing by my side to design promotion material, such as the flyer for this event. Tariq, thank you for being both the moderator and the master of ceremony for this event. Your prompt responses and your readiness to work in the Childhood Obesity Prevention team is really very much appreciated. Last but not least, a very special thanks to TG Bryan for your leadership and continuous support to me, the Childhood Obesity Prevention District team, and most importantly, the Childhood Obesity Prevention Program. But the biggest thank you goes to you, participants. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in the lecture. It shows your interest, and I hope also your commitment to join forces in the fight against childhood obesity. Continue to follow us on our Rotary District 7030 Childhood Obesity Prevention Facebook page to stay up to date on our program and join us whenever you can. Once again, thank you all. Over to you, Tariq.
Thank you, Virginia, for those warm words of thanks. And so I definitely would like to endorse what you're saying. Thank you to all who would have supported such a successful webinar, especially our two lovely presenters, Dr. Rosman Adams and Dr. Wilco, and to you, the participants. I know most of you are tired and you're eager to go and get some rest and prepare for a healthy day tomorrow. And so I'll ask our district governor, Brian Glasgow, to officially close this event. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Tariq. We had a wonderful evening. We've been educated, we've been informed, and we've been inspired. So all that remains is for me to reaffirm the district's commitment to the cause. I know a number of clubs have projects specifically designed to address childhood obesity and also the combined effects of childhood obesity and mental health. So without continuing any further, I'd like to wish everyone good night and until next time. Thank you very much for attending.